All right, so what we'll do is we'll open Xcode and create a new project of type app, and you're welcome to name it widget demo with your initials. And all we will do is this is going to be a very simple app, just a label in the center, so that what we can do beyond that is to explore how widgets work, how a widget is added, and how to program it to do various things that we may want to do. So start your Xcode and choose this first option, create a new Xcode project. And when that pops up, it will ask you what kind of app, and there are various kinds that Xcode allows us to create. What we are interested in right now is the simplest, which is called an app, just an app. So let's do that. And I'm going to call it widget demo with my initials there. And we'll leave the interface as storyboard language as Swift. Okay, so once that is done, okay, it's asking me where to save it. I'm going to save it in the default location. And there we go. So this has created our app, which we'll use for the purpose of testing the widgets. And if you go to the main storyboard right here, and this we have done many times in the intro course. So once we have the storyboard, I'm going to add a label to it. Click the plus for the library, choose a label and drop it in the center. Okay. And now I'm just going to change its text. I'm going to do it here. Hello world. Okay. And I'm going to recenter it. All right. So that's our app. Okay. And we'll do a brief walkthrough of what all is here, but I want to go to the next step right away. So the next step is to add a widget to it. And to add a widget, the process is we'll add a new target of type widget, and we can call it widget and use whatever the default settings are that it provides us. Okay. So we go back to Xcode and oops, that's not Xcode, that's WebEx. So file, new target. Okay. Within Xcode, file, new target. And among all these are different types of targets we could add to an app. You can see there are lots and lots of functionality. We could spend, multiple courses if we were to try to cover all of this. But what we want to do is gain a general understanding of how these work. So whichever one you want to use, you will have an idea of how to go about it. So at the bottom here of application extension, you will see widget extension. Okay, and we've already talked about this. Widgets are a type of app extensions. And then we'll choose that. It will ask us to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it a widget. And we'll leave all the other settings as they are. Include live activities checked, make sure that's there. The project, everything else is the default. All right. So it's adding it and it's asking us activate. This scheme has been created for the null target. I don't know why it says null, but we'll just say activate to use this scheme for building and debugging schemes. Okay. So here we will activate it. So we had this YM widget demo. This is our demo app, and this is the actual widget. Okay, and it's got a bunch of files here. Now, what I want you to do is to run this and open it in the open it in the simulator. Okay, so there we go. We're going to run it. And what it's going to do is it's going to open with this app running as you have experienced before many times. And then we'll see how that widget comes into being. And while that's happening in the background, it's compiling, it's building, I want to talk you through what happens here. What are all these files? So when we first created the app, it created three files for us: app delegate, scene delegate, and view controller. These are three Swift files, and in addition, there was a main storyboard and a launch screen storyboard. So this is where your app comes into being when it's running on a device or on the simulator. And there are things it does. So this app delegate is where the execution comes, and it has various functions. One is did finish launching with options. So when the launching has finished, when the app has been launched, you can customize it. You can add code here that you want to be executed when the app has finished launching. For example, fetching something from the internet, a database, anything like that. And what it also does is that's one option it gives us. And additionally, there is a scene delegate. So iOS introduced the concept of scenes. This was, what it does is it allows your app to open multiple windows. It's kind of like Windows. So that happens through the scene delegate. Now my app has finished launching. Uh, it's called YM Widget Demo. So this is the app that has just finished launching. Okay, let me finish my thought here. This is giving me an error. Let me check what the details are. Okay. The app seemed to have launched. It did not open by itself. So this error might have something to do with it. I don't want to dwell on it too much. But it does not seem to be impeding what we want to do. So what does this scene delegate do? It creates a scene which basically, ultimately what it's going to do is it's going to load this storyboard, the main storyboard, which is where our app, this is the entry point for the app. This arrow indicates the entry point, and the storyboard is rendered as you have designed it. All right. So uh, that said, let's go back to the app. Let me just clean up here. I was testing this, you know, running a test on how to actually design this app and how to deliver this lecture. So I have a widget already added there, which I have removed now. Now, what you want to do is you want to press and hold away from any of these icons. Just press and hold, and it will give you a plus here. This plus is to add objects to your home screen. So I'm going to hit plus, and this is where the widgets can be added. And our app, the whatever name you gave your app, you look for that here. There seems to be a problem. Okay, I think the problem is here. I have run the widget demo target here. What I want to do is I want to run this target. So let's stop this for the moment. Okay, it's running. There it is. It actually automatically added the demo widget here because I chose to run it like that. But if it doesn't appear, what you can do is just press and hold from the library. You'll be able to search and add it to the screen you want. And these are the various configurations it gives us, the size. So this is like a 4x4 icon size. This is the entire screen width, but no, sorry, not 4x4, 2x2. This is 2 rows. The next one is, this is the one that is 4x4. And you can choose whichever one you want to add. Let's choose the middle one and say add widget. See what happens. The widget appears. Okay. Now, did you notice a few things? One is that all this widget, YM widget demo, see, this is the widget from my app. This is displaying the current time. Okay. And when I asked to add from here, and I chose this, it says my widget. This is an example widget. We didn't do any of these things. I never said, I just added the widget in Xcode. And this is what it gives me as a base, that it will display the current time. And these are the description items it is going to show by default. So my question to you now is, how do we go about finding what happened here and how it happened and what kind of learning we can derive from it? So if we go to this widget target that we added to create the widget, there are 3 Swift files: a widget bundle, a widget live activity, and a widget. In the widget bundle, there is just a struct and uh, okay, so we did I'm going to do a brief digression here. We did a module on Swift UI last semester, and we are going to do a lot more of it this semester. And in Swift UI, the way you design your interfaces is a little different from the storyboard. You design it through code. You could also do a graphical WYSIWYG design, but here in the code, what is happening is that it's saying that the widget inherits from the widget object, and this is how it displays. There is a widget and a widget live activity. These will get executed. So, and these are the 2 classes here. So what we are going to do is we are going to examine them one by one. Let's go to the widget, YM widget. All right. And now what we want to do is we want to look for those things that we saw. We saw the text. The text was my widget, and this is an example widget. Let's try to find this. You could, of course, search for it, but what's the fun in that? All right, so there it is. See, YM widget, it inherits, again, properties from widget. And this is what it is saying, that display all the choices that are available for the widget. And this is the display name, my widget, and this is an example widget. Okay, so I'm going to change this to just to see if this is where it's happening. My new widget, this is the example widget for advanced iOS. Okay, and this version, not version, when we use Swift UI, there is a preview that is shown here. And right now it is just spinning the wheel. So we'll just run the app and see what happened when we made these changes. Okay. So whenever we run an app, you will see that the preview gets paused, although it's not showing me anything. So it won't be live updating the preview. Okay, so is this is my app that was already running. Let's cancel this. We'll restart so that the text gets updated. Okay, for some reason it insists on giving me this error. I'm just going to say okay. And we will search for the widget again. Okay, so there you go, my new widget. This is an example widget for advanced iOS. So you already know if you're adding a widget to your app, this is how you can change the description and the title. Okay, now let's work on figuring out where this time is coming from. Okay, I think I hit the run button twice, so it's telling me that it's already running. So we're going to dismiss that and we'll continue our investigation here. Okay, so this is what we have done so far. We ran the app and we saw the widget description and the widget itself, right? It's showing the time in hour and minutes format. So what we are doing now is a bunch of files got added, right? We have already seen, we already gone a little bit into this, but I want to just talk about it a bit. So we are examining them to see how all this works. Now, I cannot stress enough that this is a very important skill. So, in all likelihood, if you go and work in the field, you will probably be joining a team that already has an existing code base. And they have done lots of things. It may be a very large code base, it may be a small code base, but the chances that you will be starting something from scratch are low. You will join a team. So this kind of skill to be able to connect the dots and see how things are happening, where what is happening, how to make changes. This is a very important skill. For example, somebody may have just told you that, okay, I don't like this text. I want you to go and change it. That's a simple one. You probably could have just searched for that older text and changed it. Now, to do something like this, I don't want to display the time here. I want to display something else. Now, how do you find that? You cannot really search for 1:51 p.m. because, this is the real time when this view was created. So now that's where your detective skills will come in. And that's what we are going to do. So not only are we going to look at how widgets are created and work, we will use this as an exercise in how to decipher those things. The other difference between what we are doing today and what we did on most of our apps last semester was that the widget kit is where all the widgets come from. It relies on Swift UI. Swift UI is a newer methodology compared to storyboards. It's kind of like if you've used React, the simplest thing you can think of is like HTML. You write some HTML and it displays a certain way. Swift UI is like that. You have labels, as text. You have buttons. You have all the kinds of view components that you could imagine, and you have ways to format them. You have to ways to change attributes. You have ways to specify what happens when a button is clicked. So all of those things. So this part we've already done. Change the text on the widget description string. Now what we want to do is change the text on the widget itself. Instead of it showing the time, I want it to show something else. Okay. So where is it picking up the time? So you will see that in this, we are in the widget class, file, Swift file. It imports WidgetKit and Swift UI. And there is a class or a struct called provider, which inherits from timeline provider and implements a certain set of functions. Okay. And I already see here something called current date, right? So it's possible that the date is coming up from here. But where is it being displayed? If we come here, widget entry view, this is where the widget view is being created. And it gets a parameter called entry, which is of the type provider.entry. And we already saw this class provider. So when it inherits from timeline provider, it inherits something called an entry. And what's happening is that this entry has an object called date, which is being displayed here. Now, to test this theory, whether we are onto something, I'm going to do simple modification here. I'm going to put this text date in a VStack. VStack is a vertical stack of objects, and add another text here. And let's call it a replacement text. And we'll run this again and see what happens. So I am using WebEx to record this lecture, WebEx meeting. And that is actually very, very resource intensive. So it slows down my Xcode, the iOS simulator, everything else. So let's just see what happens. Okay, it says that it has finished building. Okay, and it probably gave me the same error as it did before. Yep. And this, my suspicion is also related to the resource crunch due to WebEx. Anyhow, you'll see that what we typed there as replacement text showed up here. So our theory that this is where the widget text is being built is correct. Now, what we want to do is we want to do something more meaningful. So we know how to do this. If I were to comment out this line here, it will stop showing the date, right? It will just show me replacement text. So I'm going to run it and we'll see what else. Okay. So the question then is, what is this? There is a mention here of timeline. Do you see this? Timeline. What is this timeline? What is a timeline provider? And what exactly does it have to do with a widget? So these are some widgets I had created for testing. I'm just going to remove them so we have one less screens. Okay. All right. So this is our new widget. So what I want to do is I want to figure out what this timeline provider is, right? So let's Google it. WidgetKit timeline provider. So this is going to be our go-to thing every time we want to look up. Xcode does a lot of it creates a lot of code for us. And one way to enhance our learning of it is to just look at the documentation. So at various times, WidgetKit requests a timeline from the provider. Timeline is an array of objects conforming to timeline entry. So each object conforms to this specification. This must be an interface. Each timeline entry has a date, and you can specify additional properties for displaying the widget. Okay. So consider a widget that displays the health level of a game character. And here the example is very simple. When the health level is below 100%, it recovers at a rate of 25% per hour. So this timeline will give an idea. So this is something the app could create, that the timeline entry at 1 hour. Now, if it's 25%, 1 hour from now, it will be 50%, and 2 hours from now, 75, and 100% at 3 hours. So when this timeline is provided by the app to the operating system, it knows that it can update the widget, what is displayed at these points with this information. That's what a timeline entry is, right? So the other thing to know is that the WidgetKit, and see, this is where the following code shows the structure encapsulating this information. So you could create a struct that derives from timeline entry. Let's say it's called character detail entry, and it has two properties, a date and a health level. So a date could be now 25%, now plus 1 hour, 50%. Like this, you can build this timeline and pass it on. Now, when we were trying to add the widget here, when we did the plus and we chose our widget, this part here, this is not going to update with time. In fact, you may have noticed that when it was displaying the time, it wasn't actually updating that time as it was getting changed. It was just showing the time. If I held on to this screen for 5 minutes, it continued to show the same time. So this one is a snapshot on this screen. So widgets, the current state is just displayed, whereas this here was like a clock. It would update. Okay. So what happens is that the WidgetKit could request timeline in two different ways. One is a single snapshot, that's for the configuration when we are adding, or an array of entries, right? Now then, let's go back to our code and see what's happening. So placeholder is a single, see, this is the timeline provider placeholder. All it does is it creates a simple entry with one parameter called date, current date. So that's what is displayed in that. Get snapshot is exactly the same. However, what it does is it calls this completion function. And we'll go into that in a moment. But let's look at this get timeline. What's going on here? So when the widget has added to your home screen, this is the timeline that it is given. And timeline is an array of entries. And what is going on here? First, we retrieve the current date. Actually, they have described it here. Generate a timeline consisting of 5 entries an hour apart starting from the current date. So 1 hour apart, it is showing it's going to add an entry that has the current date. And how is this being done? There is a for loop, goes from 0 increments of 1 to less than 5, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And entry date is a date object being created from the current date and time by adding to our this value, our offset. So first 0, then 1, then 2. So every entry has 1 extra hour and adding it to the current date, right? We already retrieved the current date. So this is what it's doing. It's creating a new date object. And then what we do is we say, create a simple entry object with that date, the date that has just been calculated, and append it to this entries array. It's an array of simple entries. And what is simple entry? It's a timeline entry, right? So let's say that we want to display a text, some text string along with the date. So I'm going to add another property to this simple entry, okay, to this struct. And that will throw a bunch of errors because wherever we are instantiating simple entry, we only have one argument being passed. So it's going to complain. And here we are going to add that string. So it's the name we have given is str. So let's provide the argument name here. And we'll just say test1. And over here, the same thing, str test2. And over here, we'll do something different. We'll just say step plus our offset. So it's going to, of course, I cannot, this is Swift, so I cannot just add a string to an integer. It's already complaining. It's going to give me options. Well, first it's complaining that I'm missing this str argument. Okay. So now it's probably complaining about the string, cannot convert value of type int to string. So we'll just encapsulate it like this. So what we want to do is we are providing, and I'm missing a closing bracket. I'm providing a step number, right, as the hour offset. And this is set to change every hour. So likely we won't see anything, but we'll fix that in a moment. So now what we have done is we have added another parameter to this entry. Now let's run it and see what happened. My build failed because I'm missing a parameter. Okay, there is one more instantiation of simple entry, and this is in the preview. So whenever you're using Swift UI, it does a preview here, live preview, and that is what is done by this preview provider. So I'm just going to call it preview text. Okay. Although this preview is paused right now, let's see now what happens. It builds. Build failed again. Oh, okay. This is the problem. I have an extra closing bracket. I still have a problem. Okay, because I'm not closing the entry view, which is building the preview. So a little bit of care while adding the string would have avoided this, but that's okay. Okay, now the build has succeeded, and all I see is replacement text. I don't see my step or whatever else we have added. Test one, test two, nothing. What happens if I go here? Same thing. So, any thoughts, any ideas on why we don't see this change? We added this parameter. The answer is very simple. We added it to the simple entry, but when it comes to building the widget display, the view, we are not using it. So we had the date as a style here. I'm going to still leave it as is, and I'm instead going to use the string str as the display. Okay. So now this parameter we added string and we initialized it whenever we instantiated simple entry, we have provided a value. Let's run it and see what happens. This time our widget has two text strings to display in the vertical stack, the str and this replacement text. Okay, let's close this. I'm getting the customary error, which I have dismissed rather quickly. Step 0, replacement text, step 0. Now the way it is set up, if I leave this open for an hour, at the 1 hour mark, it will change to step 1. Because that's the setting. You're saying things change every hour, right? What about here? What's going on? See, test 2. It doesn't say step. So this here is being picked up from here. It's getting a snapshot and displaying that, which is where we set test 2. Okay. So far, so good. Now, in our Android, we did a widget where we had like a slideshow, images that we could slide through. So it was more like a carousel. They were in a loop. Now, here, I think that's too many steps right now. Let's do just one more thing here. Let's try to change it from, instead of 1 hour, let's change it every 10 seconds. So we'll see step 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and like that, right? So to do that, when you're building your timeline, you've got your hour offset, 0 to 5. And in a way, this is just a counter. It goes from 0 to 4 in steps of 1. And what we are saying is that add it to the hour. So I'm just going to change its name to time offset. And here also, instead of hour offset, time offset, time offset. Okay. You could have refactored it. We have only 3 of these, so that's easy. Now, what we'll say is that instead of adding it to the hour, let's see if there is a way to add it to the seconds. Second, right? And what value will we add? If we leave it as 1 second, Let's see what happens. So it's going to add, it's telling to the timeline that every second there is an update. Okay, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That's what it's doing. Now I could say, okay, I don't want it every second. I want it every 5 seconds. So all I have to do is say 5 times time offset and run it again. So now that change will happen every 5 seconds. Let's wait for it to finish building. Okay, yeah, it has built. So it went from 0 to 1, now 2, and 5 seconds later it will go to 3. There it is. So that's what it is. So let's do a recap. What we did was we started with a very simple app. All it does is it has this. You could have a very complex app. The rest of it won't change. Then what we did was we added the widget, and we've already figured out where this text of the widget is being built, where the description is, and what this timeline is, and how to leverage it, how to use it to our benefit. Okay, wonderful. Now what we want to do is we want to basically build like a slideshow. The way we did in our advanced Android, we have a set of images that we put in the slideshow. So, okay, before we move on, Swift UI, what we did today is it's actually very simple. Uh, the functionality of Swift UI we have used is simply this, a VStack. This is where the widget is being built. It's a vertical stack, and there are two text entries here. Okay. One of them is coming from the timeline, and the other is a static text. Oh, finally, the preview. You see, it generated the preview. Let me zoom out. So this preview, like I said, is coming from here. So you see this preview text and whatever else. This preview text is in the simple entry, the entry that we passed, single entry. And then by default, it also adds the replacement text. So this is how you can, while you're working without running your app, you can see what's going on. Any changes you make here, if you were to add something, they will be getting updated in the preview. Okay, so let's see how we can add the images here, right? So to add images, and we've done this before in our, you should know this from the intro course. If you go into the assets, this is where you can add your images. And where are the images? So in your weekly learning folder for this week, there is an archive, a zip file with a set of 6 images. And what we'll do is we'll use these 6 images. These are the same images we use in the advanced Android for the widget. So download those and add it to the Xcode assets, the asset catalog for the widget. Now I have them downloaded. Okay. So these are my 6 images. I want to add them here. I'll just drag and drop them. Okay, so I've got 6 images. Image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is what they look like. I can select multiple and see all of them. Okay, and by default, they go into this sizing of 1x. And this is something I'm going to leave for you as food for thought. What is this 1x, 2x, 3x business? Right now, we are going to leave them wherever they appeared by default. So now I want to use these 6 images, right? Let me start by adding just one. So here I can say image, Swift UI has an image. Okay. And I want, if I say img1, does it work? I want to see. Does it pick it up by default from assets? Yeah, apparently so. So all it needs is the string name from the assets, and it's going to display it. Okay, let's see what happens. There it is. Right? Let's change the type of the widget, the size. I'm going to remove this and add a larger widget just to see if all the text fits, because right now it's centering vertically and that's cutting off part of the image as well as the the text. So we'll add this widget. All right. So that's where it is. And the step counter is functioning. Okay. So how about this? What we can do is at those 5-second intervals, we can change this image. Go from image 1 to image 2, image 2 to image 3, right? So for that, what do we need? Right now, we are passing a string, or we have a property in simple entry of type string, which stores the text step 1, step 2, etc., etc. What if we create an array here in the timeline provider called images and give it all the image names like so. Okay, so we've got these 6 images here. And now instead of saying this string is step, whatever it is, says here, I will just say that this string is an element from the images of time offset, the index time offset, right? So it's going to provide me this as the string. Each entry, the first one will get associated with image 1, the second one with image 2, and so on. And over here, instead of using this entry, we are saying just display the str, and in a text, we are going to use it here. Display it as an image. How about that? Let's see what happens. So we're going to run it again. Okay. All right. So that step, whatever it said before, is gone. And instead, we've got an image. And look at that. It's getting updated. Every 5 seconds, the image is changing. So it will stop at the last image, right? And then, because that's how we have done it, we have said that our timeline only has that many points. And this it's showing me is the last image. If I were to go to my assets and choose these, I actually have one more image. This is not the last image. It's showing this as the last image, but the last is this one with the greenery. So what's going on? That's also simple because our time offset is going from 0 to a fixed number of 5. Instead, it should go from images, however many elements are there. So images.count. Now we will run it and we should see this thing stopping at the 6th image. Okay, it's done compiling. It's going to load. And every 5 seconds, it's going to update. That's the setting we have chosen. Right, so this was where it was stopping before. Now it should go one more. There it is. Okay, so this is your introduction, your foray into widgets, how you can use them, how you can build the timeline, how you can, have the operating system intelligently interact with it. Okay. So this is sort of like a further recap of what we have done, how a widget comes into being on the device. You saw how these different files got added and where the widget is being built. So basically, all the action, whatever we did, has been so far in this widget file. We saw how the description can be changed. We saw that this simple entry, which derives from timeline entry, is where we can pass a variety of data. It's not limited to two properties. You can have more properties and use them in your display, which is being done here. This struct, which inherits from view, is what provides the display. And this is where you build the timeline and you tell the widget at what intervals you want things to happen. Okay. So for example, if you are building like the example they gave us in the documentation of the game, how the game character will replenish, how the life will be replenished. So that can be done. So what is a timeline? We know this, what are timeline entries and how we can use them to update the widget contents. This is also what we have done. Okay, so this is something which we have not yet covered. What is a live activity and associated views? Okay, let's look at what a live activity is. And we have an example right here. YM widget live activity. Okay, while this is loading, I would like to Google that WidgetKit live activities. Okay, displaying live data. So not always are you going to have, like that game example is actually very simple. You know what's going to happen already when you display things on the widget. But what you don't, sometimes you may not know